Hello, I'm Dave Apsley with OSU Extension.
And I'm Jamie Dahl with Central State University Extension.
And we're going to talk a little bit about oaks and why we're concerned. So if we can show the first slide.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about this kind of publication that Dave and I have been working on together with a broad range of partners really behind this effort, but really acknowledging that we do have an issue with oak, particularly in Southeast Ohio, and so we're pulling together this this little fact sheet to kind of raise more awareness just about this broad issue. And any other things you want to say about that fact sheet, Dave?
Just that it's a publication that was originally designed to mail to landowners to try to get them to actively manage for their oaks, but we're going to have a bunch of variety of different versions of that for different purposes, so stay tuned. We'll have a lot of pubs coming out.
Yeah, so but really that fact sheet is very simple. It doesn't really tell you all the pieces of the problem, but what we're trying right now is to just raise awareness about the problem, because a lot of folks just aren't aware. So one thing that is important to focus on is our slide here, this visual that basically shows us where are our forests in Ohio. And so depending on where you live, you may not kind of have a good idea of this big picture, but they really are predominantly in the southeast portion and kind of the eastern half of the state. And so those of us in the southeast, when we go into the woods, you may start to notice this kind of shift where we have these oak dominant canopies, but if you look at what's going on underneath on the forest floor, we have a lot of maple. So some other just big picture things about Ohio's forests. 66% of our forest is in those counties in the southeast, and about 60% of Ohio's forest is dominated by oak-hickory.
So this southeast part of the state is the part that wasn't glaciated. It's too hilly to really be farmed, and that's where most of our forest is.
And so this is an infographic that Dave and I worked on together with some other colleagues at Ohio State. And basically, if you take a look at this, you can see what's going on in the canopy. And so it's that we have that oak dominance. But then we start to see, with these larger trees, when we look at the other parts of the canopy, a real shift. And if you want to click through, Dave.
So if you look at that top line, it shows the relationship between oak and maple. There are other trees in the canopy, but oaks and maple are the most dominant there. And then as we go to smaller diameters and smaller sizes of trees.
Yeah, and I guess an important thing, little background on this graphic, this is just showing the relationship between oak and maple in the 17 county area that we work in Ohio. So this is not including all other species, but you can see that, okay, in the larger trees, oak is dominant, and that's kind of what we classically think of in Ohio's forests. But then if we look at what's underneath in the mid-story, we start to see a little bit of a shift where there's more maple than oak. And so obviously as those trees grow up, we're shifting the dominance of what type of forest we're going to have. And then the problem continues.
And it gets more dramatic when you look at the understory and the smallest size trees. If you can look in the canopy, if you're just looking at oak and maple, about 70% of those trees are oak. Get into the middle, it's closer to 35%. And then when we look at the really young trees that are coming in, only about 20% are oak. So we're seeing these trends. We're using a lot of oak, but we're seeing, gosh, there aren't many oaks basically on the bench to come in and fill in when oaks die or when they're harvested or when we have a disturbance.
Right. So we're hoping this graphic, we're going to be using this more and more to kind of help people visualize what is going on. And I think sometimes people, we don't want this to come across as we're anti-maple. It's just maple is out competing a species that has a lot of ecological importance, and the oaks are going to need a little bit of help from us, and we can't just make that work on public land. We really have to work with our private landowners and raise awareness about how we can help these oaks to better regenerate, help the new oaks to come up in the forest.
In future segments, we'll talk about why this is happening and what we can do to help fix that problem.
All right.